Day one of the play-in tournament was a controversial one. The Warriors-Grizzlies game was a hell of a spectacle with some great highlights and big numbers out of the star duo of Jimmy and Steph, but the fourth quarter was so dictated by officiating that it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And the Hawks versus Magic game was a game between the Hawks and the Magic. Yuck! All of that and more in the first recap of many to come throughout the 2025 playoffs. Hello everybody, welcome to Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel and drop a like on this video, and check us out over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you'd like to enjoy this as an audio-only experience. As a quick reminder, we are doing a recap of the game around here going forward, and my immediate post-game right after the buzzer reactions are over on Little Rusty Buckets, and I gave that reaction to these games already. That will be the top link in the description. But with that said, let's get into the first quarter of this Warriors-Grizzlies game. The quarter started great for Memphis with some hot three-point shooting. Ja hit a three out of the corner and Jaren hit a pair of them, including this really tough shot in transition. Ja also started the game getting to his spots pretty well offensively. Here he is on Moses Moody in the face-up, and he crosses him over and hits a floater off of the glass. Meanwhile, the Dubs were struggling. Steph even started 0 from 3 outside, with 2 being clean looks and the other being an air ball after attempting to draw a foul. Zach Edey had a big presence in the first half of the quarter before he ended up sitting down, but not in a good way, unfortunately. First of all, somehow he got away with an egregious non-call for a 3 seconds in the key. I'm telling you, it's at least 10 seconds. I want to see when in the game clock. Okay, 15 seconds. He's still in. That's crazy. He was in the paint for 10 seconds. Holy shit. And then Golden State put on a masterclass in how to expose a slow-footed big man. Right here, Zach Edey is way too slow for Gary Payton out of the pick and roll, nor does he have any chance at all of interfering with Steph's pass. And here, Quentin Post is just completely wide open for a top-of-the-key three, and you know Zach Edey is not going to be stepping out for that. As a result of this, Zach was subbed out, but by then the Dubs were already rolling, going on a 26-7 run after this hot start from Memphis. Playoff Jimmy also started to get activated. He hit a wide open three that Edey understandably conceded, and he got a tough and one off of an inbounds play over Jaren Jackson Jr. Luckily, Memphis started to slow the bleeding as they closed the quarter with a 7-0 run. Desmond Bane hit a floater and a layup on back-to-back possessions, and Luke Kennard hit a sexy pull-up three over Hield after a pump fake at the buzzer, putting Golden State up 31-25 to close the quarter. Zach Edey got more opportunity at the start of the second, and it still did not go very well for him. Once again, Quentin Post got him as the trail man for an easy three-pointer, and then Zach finds himself on Jimmy Butler Island again, and he gets blown by for yet another and one. Jimmy kept finding himself on Edey almost as if it was intentional. Usually Zach's default matchup was Draymond Green, but he ended up guarding Jimmy in space multiple times, and it usually went poorly, at least initially. Golden State definitely targeted Edey as much as they possibly could, and I'll give him this. When he is around the rim, he is a great deterrent, but he is horrible outside of the paint, and Golden State has the perfect personnel to take him out of the paint and kill him with it. Quentin Post's three-point shooting, Jimmy's off the dribble game, Golden State's love of using guards as screeners, it's just a matchup nightmare. So he got subbed out again. Now, Jimmy had 10 in the first quarter, which I thought was a sign that we may get a playoff Jimmy appearance, but in the second quarter, he confirmed it, scoring 11 points, finishing the half with 21, 4, and 4 on 67.7% true shooting. Steph Curry also had his moments. After his 0-3 start, he hit a pair of absurd three-pointers. Right here, he hits a wild pull-up over Scottie Pippen Jr., and then he gets an and 1-3 out of the corner off of a handoff. Seriously, dude, what are you even on? But after subbing out Edie, Memphis would go on a 9-0 run in the middle of the quarter. It was a group effort, but Ja pulled off what I suspect will be the highlight of the game. Oh God! Ja throws a lob to himself, repositions in the air to finish. Seriously, what the hell? Just an insane play. And at the end of the half, Golden State was up 67-55. Memphis managed to close the gap against Golden State in the third quarter. Edie's minutes did not end up being nearly as disastrous as they were before, even though he ended the quarter about as embarrassingly as he could have, getting his mid-range jumper attempt at the last second blocked by Gary Payton at the buzzer. But Bane and Jaren continued to score well, as they have all game. Bane gets a hell of a scoop layup and one here over Kevon Looney. He has been cooking on the drive pretty much all game. And there were even some pretty amazing plays from Santi Aldama in there, basically the only guy who showed up for Memphis off of the bench. Right here, he passes up the open three, but makes a really smart drive inside in semi-transition. And he does some good manipulation on Quentin Post and ends up creating the space for a backdoor pass to a cutting John Conchar. But things were not all good for Memphis. At the 4-minute mark, Ja hit an and one floater on the baseline, but he would come down on his foot at a bad angle, maybe landed on Buddy Hield's foot a little bit, but it's debatable and was certainly not intentional if that's what did happen. Either way, he ended up getting injured. He would take the free throws, but would go to the bench right after for the remainder of the quarter. He would check back in at the 8-minute mark of the fourth, and he would hit a mid-range jumper immediately, so that was a pretty good sign. Overall, he seemed fine. However, unfortunately, this quarter wasn't the story of Ja making some heroic effort through injury. Instead, it was all about the refs. The officiating didn't really seem biased, even though more of the calls were in Memphis's favor than not. Really, it was just bad. They were just making stupid calls, and stupid calls did go both ways. Edie blatantly fouled Draymond by hitting him in the face. The Warriors challenged this, and even after it was, again, very blatant, well, the call remained on Draymond, and that would give him 5 fouls, with him eventually fouling out, and it prevented Zach Edey from fouling out. And they also called a phantom call on a Jimmy Butler drive early into the quarter. But worst of all, in the last 15 seconds, they called a ridiculous foul. Literally, what the fuck is this? Edie pushing Moody to the floor is completely fine, apparently, but standing next to him while he does it, completely illegal. That's not allowed. All of that said, let's focus on the last 2 minutes of the game beyond that shit. First, there's this beautiful set where Jimmy gets a screen from Steph. He then finds Draymond, who immediately sets up a running stuff with a handoff/screen. Just such a clean play there. Then after a long possession of great Warriors defense, Edie ends up getting a putback dunk off of a difficult layup attempt from Scottie Pippen Jr. This three from Curry was just filthy. Steph doesn't even make any sense, dude. Multiple pump fakes, gets the defender behind him, and then he nets it. Like, what can you even do? He really backpacked the Warriors in this quarter, scoring 15 of the Dubs' last 19 points. Butler turns it over to Scottie Pippen Jr., and he goes for the layup, but Paz manages to chase him down, but he would get called for the foul, which is yet another debatable choice by the officials here. Again, there is that terrible call on Looney that I mentioned, and after some Steph free throws, Memphis has the ball down 3 with a chance to tie, but Santi Aldama held the ball for too long, and they got a 5-second violation, which ended the game, with the final score being 121 Golden State, 116 Memphis. All right, so let's first get into some of my key takeaways for the Memphis Grizzlies. This was a good amount of scoring from their big three of Ja, Jaren, and Bane. Only 18 points from Jaren, but he shot the ball efficiently from 3, which is an area that can sometimes be a little bit inconsistent with him, and he also dealt with double teams really well, which is something that I was worried about. Ja didn't have the most efficient game, but it was completely respectable, all things considered, especially seeing that he played the last 8 minutes of the game on a really fucked up ankle. And Desmond Bane was probably the most consistent player throughout the entirety of this game, as he was driving really efficiently, hitting a lot of his three-pointers. Just very, very good stuff from him. He was the best player for Memphis this whole way through. This was a really, really weird Zach Edey game where, dependent on when you watched it, it could make you be completely out on him or completely in on him. Fucking Rudy, who loves Edey and talks about him endlessly, was like, damn, is Zach Edey's career over in the first half of the game? Because he was just getting destroyed so hard in the way that slower footed bigs often can. But Zach is just in that position which is a difficult one to be in the NBA, where you're really good at some stuff and really bad at other stuff, and which one ends up winning out kind of depends on the scheme and the matchup. And for a lot of the first half, it was very much the negative side of Zach that stood out, but it also became incredibly apparent the impact that he had on the glass whenever he would sit, because all of the sudden Golden State was getting offensive board after offensive board after offensive board. So while yes, Zach had some possessions where he got scored on in ways that most other players would not, whenever he does get a stop, whenever there is a stop and Zach Edey is on the floor, the fucking possession will actually end at the very least. So that's the reason that he overall still had a positive plus minus, because at the end of the day, he was making life harder for the Warriors as a great rim deterrent and a really good rebounder. Like, when Zach's at the basket, he's a very, very positive defender, and the fact that he ends the possession by grabbing the rebound also makes him a positive defender, but in certain contexts, he can be quite the terrible defender. The Grizzlies shot the three good percentage-wise. However, they had a very low volume. While they shot, I believe, 40+%, they only took 26 of them. They shot 17 less three-pointers than Golden State as a whole. That's just not really going to cut it. Even if the Warriors shot a slightly lower percentage, they made considerably more. Memphis was allowing Golden State's worst shooters to take open threes, including Jimmy Butler and Gary Payton II. However, they were hitting them. Gary Payton went 2 for 4. I think Jimmy Butler also went 2 for 4, if I'm not mistaken. Let me check real quick. Yes, he went 2 for 4 from 3 as well. They also let Draymond Green shoot some open threes, and none of those went in. But otherwise, good stuff shooting the ball. Actually, I am wrong. Gary Payton shot 2 for 6. I didn't know he took more threes after the first 4. But yeah, a couple of those that were obviously ones that the Grizzlies conceded, but at the end of the day, Golden State won the three-point battle. Now, I also want to highlight Scottie Pippen Jr., who had a futile effort. He was guarding Steph Curry, and there's just no way for that to go well for you in the NBA. It's not his fault. I actually think he had a lot of really impressive defensive moments, but there's just no answer for Stephen Curry. It's Scottie Pippen Jr., I'm telling you, buddy, it's not your fault. The Grizzlies also got only 19 bench points, where the Warriors had, I believe, 30 plus. 14 of those were also from Santi Aldama, so he's pretty much the only guy who showed up. The other buckets were like a three-pointer from Luke Kennard. John Conchar went 3 for 3, so shout out to him for that. Vince Williams Jr. checked into the game just to get 2 fouls and 2 turnovers in 2 minutes and go -6, so not a very good showing for him. And one last thing that worked really strongly against Memphis is they did turn the ball over considerably more, getting 19 turnovers, whereas the Dubs only got 10. Now, as for some takeaways with the Warriors, Steph and Jimmy went completely nuts. 38, 7, and 6, as well as 3 steals for Jimmy on 68% true shooting, getting 18 free throw attempts. I feel like most of the time when Jimmy Butler has 35 plus, he gets like 15 free throw attempts. That's just how it is with him. 37, 8, and 4 for Steph on 67% true shooting. Jimmy did most of the damage for a majority of the game, but Steph would close it out strong, scoring 15 of the last 19 points for the dub in the fourth for the Dubs. Also, as I mentioned, you got 30 points off of the bench for the Golden State Warriors, with Quentin Post going 3 for 4 from outside, 5 for 6 overall from the field. Gary Payton also had 12 points, shot the 3 better than you would have expected, I guess, even though he was 2 for 6 and not 2 for 4. And he was a really effective roll man out of the pick and roll as a small player, which is something that he's known for, playing like a center at the guard spot. Podsminski also completely shit the bed in terms of shooting the ball, 1 for 7 from the field. He had some good defensive moments. It's not like he was holistically bad, but a lot of really clean catch and shoot opportunities that he did not capitalize on. Also, I want to give a shout out to Moses Moody because he played really, really good defense on Ja Morant, which this game from the Golden State Warriors to me felt like somewhat of a statement. I understand the Memphis Grizzlies are not necessarily the most impressive team in the world. You know, it's not like they beat a true like top dog. However, the way in which they managed to win this game, the dominance between their stars, they could probably get more out of their role players more often than they did in this one. And especially if they just get some consistent contributions out of like Buddy Hield and shit, like if he can actually be a real player, if Kevon Looney can actually play, if Pods can hit his threes, if Moody can hit his threes, like the role players just need to do a good enough job and let their star duo do that job. Otherwise, let Draymond do a lot of carrying on the defensive end. Also, Draymond had 10 assists in this game and 4 stocks, so I should highlight that. Good for him there. But yeah, very, very good game from the Golden State Warriors. I feel all the more confident in them for a playoff setting, and we're probably going to be doing a Houston Rockets versus Warriors prediction for round 1. Unrelated to the game, well, at least unrelated to the actual basketball analysis of it all, I just would like to get one quick complaint off. Reggie Miller kept saying, like, I'm telling you, he said this 3 or 4 times. Every time Jimmy Butler would score, just being like, you've heard of playoff Jimmy Butler, but what about play-in Jimmy Butler? And he said it like it was some creative, interesting, like, play on words. Like, he's like, did you know that playoffs and play-in both start with the word play? That's a pretty impressive observation, wouldn't you say? No, it's fucking annoying, and he kept saying it over and over and over again. And then just an especially stupid moment, Steph Curry had a play at the end, as I highlighted, where he did, 2 pump fakes, lost Scottie Pippen Jr. and shot the 3. And then Reggie goes on the broadcast and he says, count it out with me. 1 pump fake, 2 pump fake. And then after 2, Steph shoots the 3 and he says 3 pump fake on the 3. That's not what a pump fake is, Reggie. He shot the ball the 3rd time. He repeated it. He didn't say this once. He said it twice with the replay available to him. I couldn't believe it that he doubled down. That's what was actually baffling. Maybe he was afraid he looked stupid on the first one, so might as well stick with your guns. But you look extra dumb for sticking with your guns. He was just so fucking annoying the whole game, and it really felt like he was wrestling with Kevin Harlan on the broadcast. There were times where he was like trying to be the play-by-play guy out of nowhere, and it's like, that's not your fucking job. Fuck off, Reggie Miller. Oh yeah, duh. Okay, something we're going to be doing for the entire playoffs this year is I'm going to be doing an entertainment grade for every game. And wait, isn't that supposed to be a Little Rusty thing? It totally is. We're totally supposed to do that there. All right, we're doing this on Little Rusty buckets from now on, and we fucking forgot. But we'll do it in this video today because I didn't do it there. We have this pretty basic system here. We got an S tier is instant classic, A, excellent, but not that memorable. B, a good time worth watching. C, a forgettable game. And then F, fans only. I'm going to say F for fuck that. Don't watch that game. There's enough basketball out there. We're going to do a tier list with this, end up ranking the best playoff games and best playoff series of 2025. But as for this play-in game, I'm going to give this a B+ in the entertainment category. And that's a damn shame because honestly, I would say a majority of this game was an A. Like truly a very, very enjoyable game. Not quite S tier, but a very good one. And unfortunately, the refs just completely ruined that. They really detracted from the enjoyment of the end of the game. And that is the most important part. As I said in the intro, it left people with a bad taste in their mouth. It was going good, and then you just have to deal with that shit, and it sucks, and I hate it. I hate when officiating ends up dictating the feeling of the game so much. Even if I felt the Warriors were going to win this game regardless, I hate how much the refs just had their prints all over this one. But now let's move on to the less exciting game of the night between the Orlando Magic and the Atlanta Hawks. I know I kind of poo-pooed on this game on the onset just because I don't really care for either of these teams, especially the Atlanta Hawks, who are more of a depressing experience than anything else, but there was plenty of good hoops available for at least a good portion of this game. Let's start off with the first quarter, which was just a complete fucking nightmare for the Atlanta Hawks, one that would set them back for the rest of the game. Trae Young was in hell, scoring 0 points on 0 for 4 shooting with a turnover, as well as a team worst -16 in the 10 minutes and 40 seconds that he played. This was a horrible possession here for the Hawks. Orlando's wing defense is just everywhere, and they end up forcing a shot clock violation. The Magic were swarming Trae Young at every possible opportunity, and to make matters worse, no one for Atlanta could do fucking anything on offense if it wasn't Trae setting them up. Meanwhile, Orlando had a really hot quarter, especially Anthony Black, who scored 7 points on 3 of 3 shooting. Here he is once again bothering Trae Young, getting the block and then the catch and shoot wing transition 3 on the other end. Paulo struggled with his shot in this game, but he got to the line a good bit, and he had 5 dimes in the quarter. Here he throws a lob to Anthony Black, who lays it in, a really tough angle to get that pass through. Overall, the quarter was kind of hard to watch because so much of it was free throws. Both teams combined shot 13 free throws, with 11 of them going towards Orlando. So many stoppages in play. The Hawks did actually start okay, hitting 7 of their first 12 shots, but they would follow that by going 0 for 8. And as a result, Orlando would close the quarter with an 18-2 run, being up 32-17 by the end of the first. In the second quarter, not much changed. Orlando went up even bigger for a bit, but Atlanta managed to bring it right back to the same deficit as before. Congrats, guys. Didn't get worse. It didn't get better either, but it didn't get worse. That's something. The contrast and depth of scoring could not be more apparent with the bench scoring difference. At half, Orlando's bench had scored 23 points. Atlanta's bench scored fucking 6. Jesus. Trae continued to be harassed by Paulo and Franz. Here he is getting blocked by Paulo on the drive. This was called a foul, but Orlando challenged it and it was overturned. And Paulo continued to drop dimes. Here he is finding a cutting Jonathan Isaac for a dunk. John Isaac, by the way, really effective as a center along with Paulo and Franz. Just so much wing length available. The Magic also continued their hot shooting, which was encapsulated best by this play, where Franz gets an and one running bank-in mid-range shot on Mo Gay. And Orlando also got quite a few contributions from Wendell Carter Jr., who would score 9 points and grab 2 offensive rebounds in the second quarter alone. Orlando is now up 61-47 going into the second half. The Magic have a 17-3 record this year when scoring 60 plus in the first half, so things are looking very good for them. That also illustrates how damn good their defense is, because 60 plus and a half isn't even that crazy. In quarter 3, the Magic went extremely cold, which is not a huge surprise as offense is not their forte, and it did feel like they'd come back down to earth a little bit with the hot shooting first half. They would end up going 8 for 21 from the field in this quarter. As a result, the Atlanta Hawks made a comeback. Trae started to see some shots drop. This shot from Trae made it a 4-point game, hitting a high arcing layup with his left hand, and we got a buzzer-beating 3 out of the corner from Georges Niang, which meant Orlando's lead was dropped to just 6 going into the fourth. However, this quarter was very much a product of Orlando slowing down, not Atlanta figuring stuff out. So with a 79-76 lead going into the fourth, Orlando was ready to turn it up again, and Cole Anthony made a point to bury the Hawks in this quarter. I'm no fan of Cole, but he was insane in this fourth quarter, shooting 4 of 6 from the field, scoring 13 points, as well as dropping 4 dimes. This pass in particular was my favorite play of his, where he finds Wendell for a dunk on the fast break. Anthony Black also hit a pair of big 3-pointers, including this one where Trey just gets completely lost from some contact from Paulo. He thinks he's supposed to switch. It gets miscommunicated, and he ends up leaving Anthony wide open for three. Atlanta's offense was putrid, dirt, nasty, garbage trash in this quarter, finishing shooting just 4 for 21, which is 19% from the field. Specifically, they missed a ton of layups. I actually don't know if I've ever seen that many bricked layups in one quarter of an NBA game. An understandably frustrated Trae Young would get ejected at the 5-minute mark after angrily throwing the ball at the ref after hitting a floater, and we can pretty much call it game at that point because they were down 20 and they don't have their best guy. So Orlando would win 120-95. Some takeaways for the Magic. First of all, Paulo and Franz are a legit duo, which I do think could be a confusing take if you just look purely at their box score in this game, but really what was important to me is they played and had a superstar level presence. Like, it's not necessarily about the box score all the time so much as the impact they have on the floor and the way that the defense was treating those guys. It resulted in a really well-flowing offense for the Orlando Magic, and they got so many clean looks for their teammates that they were able to capitalize on. So if you get that plus Paulo and Franz hitting their shots a little bit, then suddenly they're actually a pretty damn good team. The problem is oftentimes when they set up their teammates, they don't actually finish the fucking plays. But a big contribution from a lot of guys outside of that star duo, but at the end of the day, it still started with those two. Anthony Black is a really good player, which unfortunately pains me because he's yet another victim of the Nikola Vucevic trade. He has a ton of upside and a really great floor. Like, I think he's got a lot of room to grow as a player while simultaneously he's an excellent role player right now. He put up 16 points on 101% true shooting. I think he missed one shot out of 7, hit all of his 3-pointers, and went 1 for 2 from the line. This was also one of the best Wendell games that I've seen in a long time. He put up 19.7 rebounds and 2 blocks on 69% true shooting. He also had a ton of offensive I think 3 or 4 of those 7 boards were offensive rebounds, a couple of putbacks as well. Hit some 3-pointers. Wendell has kind of been more of a theory than an actual in-practice NBA player, but when he is actually hitting his shots, like, he's a stretch big who does really good defense, really does little stuff well. Like, I would really love if this was something we could see from him more consistently, and I'm sure the Orlando Magic would too, because he's the perfect type of center to have when you have spacing issues. But the three's not actually real. It just is sometimes. Maybe this is the sign of things turning around. As I mentioned, Cole Anthony, not a player that I care for. I don't usually think that he's a very good player because he's just an archetype of guy that I think historically gets overrated, which is little guard who is a high volume shooter who is not a particularly good rim presence, not a very good playmaker, but they take a lot of space. They take a lot of shots, and those guys can have hot games and look fucking unbelievable, but they can also have bad ones and all of their damn shots are missing. In the first half of this game, actually, Cole Anthony had a stretch where he missed like 3 or 4 shots in a row, and I was like, oh boy, here we go. Cole Anthony about to bury this team by shooting them out of the game, but then he picked it up. He especially dominated in the fourth quarter, and he finished the game with 26 points in 20 minutes on 73% true shooting. Apparently, ever since the turn of the calendar year, he's been shooting 41% from 3. I did not know it had been that good of late because he's usually been more of a in theory shooter rather than an actually good one. But yeah, dude, like, I'm not trying to dog on him in his good game. He surprised me a lot, and if that 3-point shot is real, that makes him a considerably better player even if his inside the arc scoring leaves room to be desired. KCP went 1 for 8 from the floor. Yeesh. That's not good. And that's where we leave it with the Magic. For my Hawks takeaways, get Trae Young out of there. I am so fucking tired of seeing him try and carry this sorry-ass squad in the play-in year after year after year after year. Ever since 2021, this shit has been the same story over and over and over again. I'm getting so tired of watching Trae fail to push this big-ass boulder up the infinite hill on his own over and over again. He does not have any help. Anytime he gets anything resembling help, they trade it away. I don't think they have earned the right to keep him at this point. You are failing. you are failing as a franchise, and Trey is not the best player on a championship team, so it doesn't even make sense to try and build around him as though that is the case. But he's also too good to allow you to be a low-seeded team so you can eventually get that guy. So you're wasting your time, you're wasting his time, you're wasting everyone's fucking time. I was actually like, oh, I should be responsible here and actually try and cover the X's and O's, the nuances of the Atlanta Hawks. Let me highlight like Zachary Risache hit a step back three that was pretty cool. Nah, fuck that. This is all I have to say about the Hawks. I'm done. We are all done. Can we try something new here? Free Trae Young and free Atlanta from having the most shit sorry ass franchise in the league. They're not actually the most sorry ass franchise, but goddamn, just consistently delivering the most unacceptable product while being so comfortable with it. With that said, these recaps take a lot of time, so I would appreciate if you dropped a like on this video, especially for our editors. Rudy is going to be editing this one, but Nick, as well as Desmond, who is joining the editing squad over here, is going to have his work cut out for him. So drop those likes, support the videos. It's all appreciated a lot. Peace.